I recently was on Samay Reina's stream along with Eric Rosen, where I lost to him in some competitive chess variants, and so have to make this video about the best chess game he has ever played. And so I'm going to do just that, and tell you about how great Eric Rosen is. But before we do that, I ask for just a minute of your time to tell you how great Surfshark is. Surfshark is a VPN, which is a virtual private network that allows you to encrypt your connection to the internet to browse it privately and anonymously. This is good for people who travel, for example. You'll be able to access certain websites abroad that you might not be able to access otherwise, as well as connect to more sensitive portals like your financial information in your bank account. If you're just a recreational user of a VPN, you might have access to certain streaming platforms, Netflix and Hulu, and catalogs only available in certain countries, as well as avoiding certain videos being blocked. At the same time, depending on where you connect from, using the VPN, you can avoid ads, which I probably shouldn't tell you about, but I will anyway. I want to show you a few of the features that make Surfshark stand out. The one that stuck out to me the most was the unlimited devices. You can connect to as many devices as you want using Surfshark, which is something that other VPNs cannot promise you. There are certain other amazing features. The no logs policy, for example. Surfshark uses only RAM-based servers on your hardware, and what that means is they keep track of nothing. And let's say your connection gets interrupted, there's an automatic kill switch, so nothing gets leaked. There's other cool features like the camouflage mode and multi-hop, and that basically masks the fact that you're using a VPN from your internet service provider and redirects your VPN several times before reaching a final destination. If you want to check out Surfshark, which you should, you can look at the link in the description below, you can click it, and use the promo code Gotham. That will give you 83% off and 3 free months. That comes out to about $2.49 a month. Give it a shot. If you don't like it, Surfshark gives you 30 days to get a full money-back guarantee. So what do you have to lose? Anyway, let's jump into the greatest chess game that Eric Rosen has ever played. This was a game against the world chess champion Magnus Carlsen. Yes, the world chess champion Magnus Carlsen. This was a chess 960 game. And what that means is the back row of pieces is shuffled. It is identical, but it is shuffled. And there is 960 ways to do this because the bishops have to be on opposite color. And the king, wherever it ends up, needs to be between the rooks. Now, why is that? Because you have to have flexibility of which side of the board you're going to castle on. Okay? So you will learn about the castling rule. Basically, you've got to end up on these two squares if you're going to castle kingside, and you've got to end up on these two squares with the king and the rook on this side of the board. But let's just skip the rules for a second. Let's jump into the game. It's 2 minutes per player with a 1 second bonus, so no dirty flagging. Eric begins the game with d4. Magnus Carlsen goes for some sort of f5. Maybe he's going to play knight f6 and knight to g6. Knight to f3, knight to f6, and bishop f4. Eric Rosen has a fetish, my friends. Eric Rosen has a fetish, and it is the London system, even here. Now, here it's not very good, because Magnus can immediately play the move knight to g6, hitting this bishop. And if you try to run the bishop back to g3, I will play the pawn to f4, and I will try to trap your bishop. So Eric says, all right, Magnus, you're the world champion, but I don't even care if I give you the bishop pair. He trades off his dark square bishop, doubling his pawns in the process, but he does open up his rook. His rook now sees the entire board. Let's see what Magnus does. b6. Knight to g3. Pawn to e6, protecting the pawn. And Eric plays a4. a4 is a really interesting move. So this is kind of an admission of the fact that you're not going to castle queenside. And to castle queenside, he would have had to move his bishop. King comes here, and the rook would jump right there, giving you a queenside kind of castle of the king. He doesn't do that. Instead, he's going directly for this pawn, trying to just instigate on that side of the board. He might have anticipated that Magnus wants bishop to b7, and that will allow you to go and target that bishop. Well, Magnus plays a5. Now Eric puts his knight on e5. This is a really interesting move as well, because if Magnus just plays something like d6, d6 is no good in my opinion, because what it does is it grants you the access to c6 with the knight. And for that reason, Magnus plays bishop b7. Now he's ready to play the move d6, but Eric correctly plays bishop f3. It's a good move. And what it does is it makes Magnus trade his good bishop. That was, that bishop was going to stand on b7 with long range activity. And now he's left Magnus with a bishop that it doesn't really strike a good impression. And what Eric is going to do is replace all his pawns on dark squares to negate the effect of the only bishop on the board. Okay, so c6. But when you push c6, you do weaken your pawns a little bit. Now Eric puts the knight back to e5, bishop c7, and queen d3, playing very Magnesian-style chess against Magnus Carlsen himself. So we get queen to d6 from Magnus. You see that? You see how we did that? So the king and the rook on that side go over there. If he had wanted to castle queenside, he would have played like this. The king would have ended up there, and the rook would have ended up there. Okay? Boom. And Magnus does the very same. Now here, Eric, in my opinion, has a tiny bit better position. He's a little bit better, and he's a little bit better because his knight is very strong, and frankly speaking, Magnus's pawn structure just isn't that good, and his bishop isn't great either. There's a little advantage. If I'm looking at this position, I'm like, okay, well, how do I make progress with my pawns? You're not going to make progress with your pieces. In positions that have 8 pawns per side, it means the position is a lot more closed. So you've got to look at the correct trades to open up advantageously. You're going to see that in a second. Magnus plays rook b8 and b5. So literally, Magnus says, okay, now I'm going to take with the rook, creating an imbalance. Magnus could have just taken with the pawn, which would have created an imbalance in and of itself, you know, leaving 2 pawns together, maybe expanding on this side of the board. But he plays with the rook because he likes the open file, he likes that weakness, makes Eric back up. Now he brings the second rook. Now here, Eric just plays, I mean, I would never play this move. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just not my style. I would have definitely played something like rook a2, which, you know, defends the pawn laterally, maintains pressure here. Eric plays the best move, actually. The best move here is to play the move knight back to d3. Because long term, defending this pawn like this and allowing this knight to come to c5 instead of e5 is actually even better. Magnus says, okay, there's nothing on that side. I'm going to back my queen up to f8. Now this bishop has vision of this pawn. And again, Eric plays the best move. Literally, you plug this position into a computer, Eric finds the best move. Knight f1, it's the best move. Why is it the best move? Position is closed. So if you can't find an advantageous exchange, you have to improve the position to its maximum capacity. So Eric realizes his knight's not doing a damn thing on g3. It's got vision on 3 useless squares. So now he transfers it to the other side of the board, where it will be more useful. Literally, the next 3 moves. Look at what Magnus is doing, though. Magnus, realizing that a piece has departed the protection of the king, launches a same-side king-side attack. Eric now does not have a single piece like knight or rook defending his king. It's just pawns. And Magnus correctly realizes that if he opens this bishop, he's going to have some serious attacking chances. And Eric correctly sacrifices a pawn. Notice that. Eric doesn't take. If Eric had taken, this would be very ugly. The queen comes, the king comes up, the rook comes behind the queen. It's not losing for white. In fact, it's literally 0-0-0, but you don't want to play this position against the world champion. So he plays knight c4, gf4, knight e5, queen g7, and king to h1. So Magnus is lining up here. Eric has completed the knight's journey. Now, potentially the most impressive thing about this game is that from about this point forward, Eric Rosen had less than 10 seconds on the clock. Remember, he gets 1 second added every time he makes a move. Magnus had 35 seconds at this point. Eric has 10 seconds on the clock versus arguably the greatest player of all time in Magnus Carlsen. I know the title is misleading, but bear with me. Anyway, king h7, Magnus continues with his plan. Eric plays rook b1. Now, again, I don't like that move. I would have preferred rook a2. I feel like when you play a move like rook a b1, I mean, it's just too solid. Like, your rook is just unhappy, you know? Rook a2, at least you maintain some vision of the pawn. But Eric is still in the game. This game is on Magnus to win, you know? Eric can play nice and solid moves. Magnus takes on e5. It's a big decision. Okay, obviously Eric takes back with the knight, although it was actually better to take with the pawn, because then you kind of like lock the pawn into the center, hits the knight, makes it move, and this structure becomes very difficult to mobilize. This one pawn, like, you know, obviously there is the end peasant rule. That pawn controls 3 pawns. So he takes with the knight, and knight takes e5, rook g8. At this point, Eric plays not this move, but the next move. He plays his most professional move of the game, f3. Why is that move so good? it stops the black pawns, it glues the position shut, and now you just have to do battle with these 3 pieces. Because the only way really to destroy a king protected like this is by sacrificing pawns, just throwing pawns forward. But now that you froze the pawns, the only way to do it would be to sacrifice pieces to open the position. Now, Magnus Carlsen can do that in a way. And by the way, that's not checkmate because the queen protects. For example, if Magnus plays knight g3 check, that looks like mate. It's not, because you can take. And now, for example, if like queen takes g3, that's checkmate. The problem is the rook just moves. And all you get is a check. And I'm safe. I mean, it doesn't look very pleasant, but I'm safe. I just move my rook, I give the king some breathing room. But that is constantly what Eric has to monitor here with less than 5 seconds on the clock. Okay, so he forces the knight back. Now here, the computer is a real gangster. The computer says, you know, it's like that meme. You guys know that chess meme? The old man reaching into the car and he's like, somebody call an ambulance, but not for me. That is what this position is. Here there's an amazing move by white, g4. Lashing out. The queen is pinning the pawn to the king, so the pawn cannot take. And if you, I mean, I'm threatening to take you because I will open up an attack on your queen. If you en passant me here, now my rook gets into the game. And it's not so clear who is attacking who. Let's make this very clear. It's really not obvious. Because black's rook on b5 is so out of the game, you can now start creating your own attack. Look, with 5 seconds on the clock, I'm not faulting Eric, but this is the cool thing about analyzing chess games. These things are possible. Eric plays queen f2 very solid. At this point, the onus is on Magnus. His time is ticking down also. He needs to find a way to win. Knight h5, very creative idea to go here. Eric plays rook e1, rook b7 by Magnus. He drops the rook back to defend this pawn so he can bring the queen forward. Very logical. Look at brilliant coordination of his pieces. That's exactly what happens with queen g5. And Eric again just shuffling. he's just waiting for his moment. Magnus plays rook g7. Now, the idea of this move is to bring this guy and get triple reinforcement on this file. Eric plays back to e5 and rook b8, rook a1. He goes for this pawn. And here there is the fatal blow. There is the fatal blow that could have been delivered. Knight g3 check. So, of course, if you don't take, if you just play king g1, then I take your rook, and you will lose this game because I now triple stack, and etc., etc. But look at this incredible, look at this. If takes, takes, right? So the queen's under attack. Obviously, you go here because you want to trade the queen. So here, now black plays f4. The queen has to protect g1, because if the queen goes here, for example, check, here, mate. King is blocked in by his own pieces. That is why the queen needs to maintain control of g1 so it can slide back and protect the king at the right moment. But you can't do that, because if you go to g1, I mate you. So, okay, we give a check to the black king. Okay, the black king moves. White has a free move here and cannot stop the checkmating attack. Look, even if you play something like knight to g4, with the intention of going here, here, and protecting this, I just sacrifice my rook. You can check me again! You can have both of my rooks hanging. But because you cannot protect against this attack, you lose. You simply lose the game. Rook d2, queen h2, here, 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 and I just hunt your king down. You know, like this. This is the best position that you can get, and here Magnus Carlsen is up 4 pawns. Your king is safe. You're down 4 pawns, though. You're going to lose. Okay? So knight g3, again, with like 4 or 5 seconds on the clock, Magnus misses it. He misses this idea, and that gives Eric all the breathing room that he needs. Suddenly he takes on a5 and he's back in the game. Now this doesn't work because, for example, if you get all the way down here, there is the amazing resource knight f7 check. Say, Levy, what's the problem? The rook! The rook! It's a discovered attack on the queen! The rook from the other side of the board comes in! You're saved! It's incredible! You're saved! And look, if instead you play queen h4 check, king g1, and then you play this, then check, king back, and rook comes back to e1. And now you can run away. That's the difference. That's the difference, is that now you can run away. When this rook was on b8 and not on g8, it would come in and take the pawn when your king made it here. But the difference is that since Magnus now moved his rook to g8 from a couple moves ago, right? Like, for example, when he played rook to g8, that's the difference, is that his rook needed to maintain vision of the pawn for this whole attack to work. Since he didn't, now all of a sudden it's Eric. It's Eric pushing. Eric's equal material. Rook a7, good move. And Magnus blunders. d6, take the rook. Takes back, knight takes pawn. Eric misses it. Playing a little bit too calm, but he doesn't need a second chance. Eric plays knight b4. e5 from Magnus. Eric takes on c6, free pawn. Magnus just going all in. Take. Here, I thought d5 worked because you attack the rook and you attack the knight, but then we would have gotten check and he's able to escape. In the game, we got queen to g6, hoping the rook moves and hoping for back rank. Rook e2 back, and queen b1, block and back, and now Eric could have won the game with a fork, but very nervously gives another check, forces the king back, and comes back once again. Listen, with 2 seconds on the clock, I would also be panicking against Magnus Carlsen, yeah? And Magnus just, he breaks. He just goes in all, he just goes all in. Eric takes, calls the bluff, stops the only check that Magnus has. Magnus comes forward looking for another check. Eric anticipates it, queen comes, rook to e4, queen check, and the king is safe. Almost like the Beth Harmon final scene. Hope I didn't just spoil the queen's gambit. Queen b1, queen f6. Now here, if you'd like to improve on Mr. Eric Rosen's play, you can find the checkmate in 3. You can pause if you'd like. I'm gonna wait, just jazz hands for a second. The checkmate in 3 here is queen check. If rook block, this is mate, and so is this. So check. Sorry, that's not a check. King escapes the check. Check here, and this is checkmate. But Eric Rosen sees the mate in 3, but says, I'm gonna drag it out a little bit longer. I'm gonna play rook to e7. You know, savor the moment of beating Magnus Carlsen. Queen takes b2 check. And here, Magnus could have continued the checks like this, and the king would have ran to safety. It would have been crazy, but Magnus went for a bullet trick. You guys can try to do this, by the way. Queen f1 check. It's a horrible move, because it blunders the queen. But in low time situations, a person might be so focused on just moving the king that they see a check and then they just move it. Now, if you lose your queen, which is what happened in the game, and Magnus resigned, you were going to lose anyway, right? But this is a bullet trick. It's not the most ethical, but Magnus goes for it. I mean, any bullet player, I'm recommending that you play, you know, things like this. And Eric actually saw that in his live stream, played like this, and won. Magnus Carlsen resigned. Eric Rosen's head-to-head score lifetime against Magnus Carlsen is 2 wins and 1 loss. There's another win against him, not on this account, not on Dr. Nechterstein, but on another one when Magnus played anonymously on Man with a Van. That was another account. So Eric has this head-to-head advantage over Magnus Carlsen, arguably making him the greatest of all time. Although I don't believe they've played in like a year and a half, unless they have, and I don't know about it. Anyway, my friends, that concludes my analysis of why Eric Rosen is the greatest player of all time. And I look forward to competing with him on semi-stream in the future. I look forward to playing him head-to-head in our Blitz matches. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And also make sure to check these guys out if you'd like. I'll see you in the next one.